Women's self-defense classes are often seen as a relatively recent agenda, yet the women's self-defense movement has a much longer history that has paralleled the various waves of women's rights. In fact, the origins of women's self-defense emerged alongside the fight for the right to vote during the first women's rights movement in the early 20th century. Self-defense activists have worked towards broadening their knowledge on self-defense for women in terms of multiple sources of harassment and violence that women encounter on the street, in their places of employment and in their homes. They also focused on challenging harmful gender stereotypes and a pervasive rape culture. Their fight continues as of today. Debbie Stephen, a martial arts and self-defense expert, survived a rape at the age of 11, and driven by her belief that all women and teenage girls should be empowered and know how to defend themselves, founded the self-defense movement Action Break Silence. Action Break Silence is a program designed in looking at self-defense quite differently, by not looking at it as a preventative mechanism and not linking martial arts to it. Founder of Action Break Silence, Debbie Stevens, further offers training free of charge to women and girls at risk of sexual or gender-based violence in South Asia and Africa. Debbie further explains how to help women to really love and believe in themselves, and also give themselves the permission to make the transition from the beautiful woman they are to a warrior.
We're trying to put women at the center of it, and we're using the physicality of the self-defense, the actual being physical, as a tool to empower women. So if we look at a woman and a guy, one of the things that we're trying to tackle is the language that we use around men that commit a range of abuse against women. And one of the things we were discussing today in the training was, if we say the word pedophile or if we say the word predator, what actually comes to mind? And for all of us as women, we start thinking of something subhuman or something inhuman. And the minute that you do that, we start almost disempowering ourselves, because if I had to think about trying to physically defend myself against somebody that was superhuman, I probably would lose some confidence. But the reality of it is that 90% of the time that we're abused as women, or raped as women, or beaten as women, or killed as women, is actually by somebody that we know.
Debbie further explains that 90% of the time that we are abused or raped, it is by someone that we know.
And when you start looking at strength and you look at, okay, so if you look at the physical strength of a guy, if I had to challenge that physical strength, would I have an opportunity to actually be successful? And most women would probably think no. So what we're doing is we're looking at a behavioral delivery system where we're saying, okay, if I have an understanding of how to stroke that man's ego if I'm trapped, and when he least expects it, I'm able to create or to cause some pain, then perhaps I have an opportunity to get out of it. So we focus very much on literally ripping and gouging into the face, and using our entire body as a weapon, really, to try and create a window of opportunity to stop that person attacking us.
Firstly, welcoming from KO Next Generation in the blue corner, please put your hands together for Alana Sheridan.
Alana Sheridan, a personal trainer and a pro-martial fighter, tells how she faced abuse from her ex-boyfriend, which led her to start her martial arts career in Muay Thai.
I had a very abusive boyfriend, so he was always verbally and emotionally abusive, but it kind of was getting to the point where I thought, like, he shoved me around a couple times, and it kind of seemed like it was going to get to the point where, like, he might put his hands on me. So I thought it would be good to learn a form of self-defense, because I didn't think I would ever, I'm only 5'4", I'm 50 kilos, I'm not very big, I've never been very big. And he was kind of this big, kind of, you know, brawly guy, and I thought, okay, I'm never gonna be able to fight him off, but if I learned enough that I could prove that he did it, that he would go to jail, because I think, you know, I've called the police before, and if you can't really prove it, or it's really hard to get a restraining order, and it's really hard for them to get in trouble. Basically when the police come, they don't help you. So I thought you have to kind of have bruises and you have to have marks on them to be able to be like, yeah, okay, he did this to me and this is the proof. So I thought if I was able to learn enough, I could put marks on him, then at least he could go to jail for it.
Alana tells me she faced a difficult time in her life at that point. She was depressed, stressed, and had poor self-esteem. But being introduced into martial arts instilled a sense of confidence, belief, and power that she never had before.
Again, because of my appearance, I was always judged about like what I can and can't do, mostly because of my size, but also because of my gender. So I'm stubborn, and I just thought, well, one, I've got this like guy at home that I want to protect myself against, and two, I don't like people kind of putting labels on me about like my abilities. So I learned to be very good at Thai boxing by just being stubborn. So I ended up overtaking people who were men, or I learned to hit quite hard for my weight, so that people would respect me more, and I can prove to them, yeah, actually I am a girl, I am, you know, small, but I can still hit really hard, and you'll still be afraid of me despite my size.
She further explains that the reason behind the launch of her martial arts and self-defense class was to bring out the female perspective of the defense mechanism.
Like, I've had to think when I finish a shift late at work and need to go home by myself, like I need to think about who's behind me, who's getting too close, all these kind of things. Men don't have to think like that most of the time, but women do. So they don't realize that if I think that I can defend myself by going to a box fit class, and they're like, yeah, you're hitting really strong, yeah, even though you're not, that what if I turn around then and someone grabs me and I go to hit them, and now I've actually broken my hand, and it could affect how I could defend myself. Or you kick with your feet, which a lot of classes teach, and now you've smashed your foot and you can't run away. So I teach very practical uses. Like Thai boxing, we use the elbows and we use the knees. We kick and we use the hands for punches. But I often tell people, don't hit with your hands because you break your hand. Don't kick with your feet, you'll break your toes. And the best things to strike with are your elbows and your knees, because you'll do a lot more damage to them than they would do to you. Always to run away. You know, if it's just you know, you throw one elbow, it might give you enough time to get away. So that's why I started running the self-defense classes, because I think you need to have a female perspective. A lot of self-defense classes are run by men, but they don't think like women because they don't have to, because they're not vulnerable. We're vulnerable as soon as we walk out on the street, even if it's just from being catcalled and whistled at to being, you know, followed and cornered in an alley. There's quite a wide branch that men don't have to really think about, unless they're maybe tourists and they might get mugged or something like that. But on a daily basis, we always have to think, well, this guy is getting a little bit close, or this guy is being a little bit forceful, this guy's pulled up in his car, he wants to talk to me, what if he gets out and pulls me in? You know, we have to constantly be vigilant about that.
It has become more evident that as a woman that it is increasingly being recognized that men were not their natural protectors, and self-defense training has offered women an opportunity to learn how to protect themselves. Since then, they have come into terms in rejecting the notion of male protectionism and began to insist that women had the right and ability to be their own defenders. Thus, self-defense training have become a highly appealing practice for more and more women.
Like if you dress like that, well then you're going to get raped. And as a young girl, if you go out and drink, well that means that you're going to get raped. And actually if you do get raped, well it's kind of your fault because you shouldn't have got drunk. So I'm not saying that women should drink, and I'm not saying that women should go out at 10, 11 o'clock at night on their own, but they should be making those rules themselves. They shouldn't be having society dictating because of their safety and because of the bad way some men are behaving.
Debbie Stevens, a voice for women in this time and age, further expresses her concern over the issues surrounding the society, which needs to be changed to actually empower and uplift women in terms of defending themselves.
And I often ask moms, you know, internationally, do you talk? I mean, have you thought about what will happen if your daughter comes to you and tells you that she's been raped? Have you thought that that may happen? And almost every mother has gone through that in her head. And then I ask, have you thought about your son being accused of rape? And she says no. And so, but it is people's sons that are raping. And so this is an interesting thing, that not just the mother, we're not putting all the responsibility on her, but families need to understand it's boys in their family that are actually raping and hitting and murdering young women.
I asked the students who train for self-defense classes regularly whether actually learning self-defense has brought a sense of security over the threats that circulate them as a woman.
So that if I was attacked, I would have the confidence to think I know what I can do, I know what hitting something feels like. And also from a keep fit perspective, is that it's very tough and it keeps you fit. And even at my age, sort of over 50, I don't believe there's anything stopping anybody, any woman at any age, in doing self-defense in order to keep fit and to protect yourself. And definitely doing something like this gives you confidence. And I think that most attackers want women to be subservient. And if you are there and you are confident to face up to somebody, they will back off.
I think in terms of whether it, I don't think that self-defense in itself is going to solve the problem of, threats against women. I believe that's a bigger societal problem that encompasses male and female together. It's a process of educating males, probably more than getting women to defend themselves. But in saying that, it does give women something that they can then find that power to go out there and try and raise the awareness of the whole issue.
But the debate still exists whether the self-defense treatment creates a safer environment for women, or does it only psychologically uplift women that they can fight back.